Hey, what's up, tribe? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the TFC Audio Project Down Under. This week I chat with Mitch Richards, who is a personal trainer and TFC Foot Nerd based in Sydney. Mitch is also the co-founder of a new company called Grounded Living Co., which we discuss throughout the episode, along with the importance of a holistic, habit-based approach to health, some key factors for making sustainable lifestyle changes, and finding the balance between discomfort for growth and accessibility for scalable, widespread change. This week's episode is brought to you by Grounded Living Co. and TFC Down Under Tables. Those who've been listening along to the podcast so far know we are huge endorsers of the importance of building a good relationship with the ground. That's why we're so excited to be teaming up with Mitch from Grounded Living Co. And to celebrate the new partnership, we're doing a giveaway that will help facilitate this relationship. The giveaway will include a ground living cushion, one of our TFC Down Under tables, and a foot restoration kit, and will be running from August 18 to 28. To find out how you can enter, head to Grounded Living Co. on Instagram. The link is in our show notes. All right, Mitch, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, mate.
My pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a long time coming. We were actually keen to get this one going in person, but considering the state of Sydney and New South Wales right now, at the time of this recording, and actually the week that this is going out, it's probably not going to be happening anytime soon. But obviously, this is also a perfect time for a chat right now because of our little collaborative giveaway we've got coming up. Which we can explore a little bit more later in the podcast. But just for the people who don't already know you, maybe we just start with a bit of background, like who you are, what you do, why you do it, kind of thing, and then we can just roll from there.
Yeah, man, for sure. So look, it's cool. It's cool finally, obviously, getting to chat and everything. But I've been personal trainer now for about 8 years, and did my qualifications, sort of 8 years ago now, and sort of growing up, obviously like a lot of young men, I suppose I dealt with a little bit of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do coming out of school, and had a lot of obviously a lot of interest in fitness, grew up playing a lot of sports and everything, and so I sort of chopped and changed and had no idea sort of the direction I wanted to take my life, and came to a point where I decided that every time I sort of had to give up anything to do with health and fitness for any sort of job or any commitments, I was sort of moving away from, what I loved. And so decided, 8 years ago to go and do my qualifications, become a personal trainer, and sort of start this journey through this whirlwind of health, fitness and well-being. And I've really enjoyed the journey. I'm really passionate about what I do, and I think I have a real I care a lot about clients, and I over the years have become more and more sort of obsessed with things outside of the gym and things that are going to make a much bigger impact, I suppose, to our lives versus the stuff that can happen inside a gym. And especially these last couple of years, I've made some big personal changes. I've gone through some big changes, and I'm sort of at a point now where, I think I work with a lot of clients who love what they do and also lead a lifestyle that's probably not ideal. And they always come to me with all sorts of issues and problems when it's injury, whether it's, things like weight loss. And I sort of almost find myself now being as much a lifestyle coach as I am, a personal trainer. And so I don't necessarily only identify with these days being just a personal trainer. I like to get more involved with what clients do. And I think the more and more I learn about health, the more it becomes, holistic and more of a story about the whole picture for any individual. And I think, I'm sort of at this point now where, with lockdown, it's given us a big opportunity to sort of shift a bit and pivot. And my wife and I are, I'm sure we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we're really pumped to sort of start almost a lifestyle brand and a company that is going to help change a lot of lives. And I think from day dot, that's been my goal, her goal, with what we do professionally, and everything is just to make a really big positive impact. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's sort of brought me to now.
Yeah, well, what you said there about, I think it's an important thing for all practitioners or trainers or anyone to start having or taking a lot more of that holistic lifestyle approach. Even, obviously we all want to stay within our scope of practice, but there's been this narrative of like, oh, you need to stay in your wheelhouse, stay in your lane, and so on. But if you're not even aware or addressing these important aspects of lifestyle, like how much people are sitting, how much people are sleeping, what people are eating and everything, and you're just focusing on your own little sort of niche or skill set, then the clients are missing out on a big thing, on a lot of big things. And at least if you are aware of them and practicing them yourself, then you can lead by example and also help steer people in the right direction, even if that means, referring on and so on. But I guess that it sounds similar to my experience being in physio, where I was working one-on-one with a lot of people and, was passionate about helping those people, but realizing that there's just such a huge need for major lifestyle changes, and creating a lifestyle or health lifestyle brand can actually help facilitate that in a lot more people in a bigger, more scalable way. And so, yeah, it seems like kind of similar journeys there.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, I sort of tossed up between the amount of impact you can make with just purely a brand versus being in there with your clients and working with them each week. But I think you just go down that route with so many clients and changing a couple of their sort of their lifestyle habits, and sitting them down and saying to them, you can spend an hour a week stretching with me, or you can just change some pretty simple things within how you live your life every day, and that's going to make a much bigger impact. And it's also a lot easier to do. It's a lot cheaper to do. And I think the more you learn about this kind of stuff, is like the more simple it actually is. If you just go back to what does that person do each day, just learning a little bit more about them and understanding that, again, by changing these couple of things, that's their lowest hanging fruit, not necessarily going and doing the right thing in the gym once a week or whatever it might be.
Yeah, 100%. Because even if people were doing the exact right thing in the gym and doing the most effective stretching methods and strengthening methods and so on, if they, like, there's that question of like, well, what about the other 16 hours? Like, you could be doing an hour a day of all of that, but what about the other 16 hours a day that you're awake? And obviously there's 24 hours in a day. If you spend if you're lucky, most people spend 7 to 8 hours sleeping. So what about the other 15, 16 hours in your day? They matter a lot more than just the hour you spend in the gym, even if you do get an hour in the gym, which a lot of people don't necessarily every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's huge. It's huge. And like you said, it's low hanging fruit. It's like, why aim for perfection in these, really in these complex activities when you can just pick the low-hanging fruit, little things like changing your footwear or sitting on the ground, which is obviously, a big part of what you're focusing on now. We obviously are very big on that concept as well, but, literally just sitting on the ground and in different positions regularly will be a better mobility practice than spending, half an hour mobilizing and then 8 hours sitting in a chair.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And then, that's the beginning for a lot of people. It's when they start to understand that, there's those couple of little changes they can make. They start to notice, it does actually make them feel really different. And it's sort of the tip of the iceberg for them. And they start getting more interested in, how can I, take this to the next step? And how can I, how can I make this harder, or how can I make it, and how can I do more of it, or how can I withstand more of, sitting on the floor, or whatever it is, any of these things. So I often find that, you've just got to kind of prompt someone in the right direction and be excited about it for them. And people love the idea of it being convenient and easy to start with. And they maybe don't know that there's a lot involved to changing your body, in so many different ways. But they don't need to know that at the beginning. They just need to get started and start to understand it and see those changes themselves. And then that brings a lot more excitement to them moving forwards, I suppose. That's what I've found.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting these days. Like Mac and I had recorded a podcast last week, or we put it out last week, about the concept of, oh sorry, it was the week before, but either way, it was about shifting culture, and we were talking about the culture of comfort and convenience that we have in modern Western society, and everyone's so focused on things being comfortable and easy and everything. And we've sort of, I think there's a lot of value these days in seeking discomfort as a practice. But at the same time, if you want to make a change in a lot of people, because there is this culture of comfort, then you also have to account for the needs for a little bit of comfort. Like if you just say for instance with ground sitting, and this is a good example, obviously a very relevant one. If you just say, just sit on the ground, don't bother about getting anything to sit on. Like it's good to be uncomfortable, and just get on the ground as much as you can. People are going to be like, well, no. Well, you might get a few extreme people going, oh yeah, that I'm definitely going to do that. And then most people will just go, oh no, I think I'll just sit on the couch. Or they might go, all right, I'll give that a go. And then they sit on the ground for like 5 minutes and like, this really sucks, I'm going back to the couch. But if they have a little cushion, for example, or something that, or for us, we've got these big jigsaw mats out, and it does provide just a little extra layer of cushion, and it means I can sit on the ground for longer without getting uncomfortable. And it also makes the ground a lot more inviting. And if you've purchased something like a cushion or some mats and you put it in there in an obvious place, you're much more likely to want to go and sit on that rather than on the couch, or especially rather than on like just carpet or tiles or wood.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think but eventually the carpet, the tiles, the wood, it all does become comfortable when you do it.
Yeah.
When you are soft enough yourself, or you don't have that much tension running through your body. But yeah, we're exactly the same. I think that's where we sort of started. I started sitting in the dog's bed. First kicked it all off, and I was the guy, a couple of years ago who I couldn't cross my legs, and I was also the guy who was training 6 days a week in a gym. I was able to squat to full depth, but sort of now I know that for me to get down there, what's compensating for my hips not being able to move properly or be able to do their simple job of getting down to the bottom of a squat, which is at the end of the day what it should be. So I think I learned a lot in the last couple of years with grounded living, and again, just spending a lot of time down there every day is just making a really big impact for me. So yeah, it's cool to see how much change that can make versus your style of training or your methodology or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. It really is game changing. Like I remember when I was at uni, learning about very deeply about the anatomy and physiology of the body and how to address all these different conditions, specific conditions, and diagnose and manage these issues that come up with the body. But the whole time in lectures and in tutoring sessions and with study at home, I'm just sitting in a chair in one position.
Yeah.
And it's not good for my learning, obviously, and it's definitely not good for my physical body, which is what I'm learning about. And I started just reading more about like things from Ido Portal and GMB and MoveNat and Katie Bowman and all these things. And I was like, geez, I'm actually just sitting far too much here. And I wondered why I felt so stiff in my hips and why I would get, little niggles and things like that at the gym. And I think that, there's a there's a lot to be said for things like full range strength training and mobility training, and we definitely don't want to bag on those at all, because they're very, very good tools, very powerful tools. But there's something, just like, I attribute most of my mobility, like my squat mobility and just my general hip and ankle and foot and knee mobility, to just being on the ground. Like, I just made a decision, like, I'm just going to spend a lot more time in a squat and on the ground. And like, to considering the mobility that I do have, I've done very little mobility work. It's really mostly been habitual practice of being on the ground, and also like ground movement things. Like we were talking about the other day about locomotives and things like animal flow and animal movements and things like that. I think they're super powerful as well. But just habitually interacting with the ground, it can't be understated.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned the animal flow and locomotives and stuff like that. And when it doesn't feel like training, and when it just feels more like moving, and I think it takes a little while to sort of separate those two things. It's just a completely different everything. Your head works differently when you're doing it. Obviously, your body responds really, really differently to the type of movement that you're doing. And I just think it's been too long where it's like that's the weird movement stuff, and more people need to see this and do this and incorporate it into their everyday life, because we often talk about it like it's what we used to do as humans. We often used to move in all these really weird and funky ways, and climb trees and have to run with no shoes on, and all that cool stuff
that is now weird and
that's
funky.
all weird. Yeah, and it becomes so normal to you when you start to do it, and it's almost like you start to understand, like, oh, this is how our body should work. And it's just so ironic that it takes someone who knows a lot now about sort of this world to get to that point of going back to what we were made to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the simple act of just removing the extra technology that we've invented, like the shoes, they're just full of most modern shoes are just full of all this extra technology and support and arch control and motion control and all of this stuff. And we've got technology, like we've got like the most perfectly designed ergonomic chairs that feel really comfortable, so we can sit in them all day without hurting our neck and back, or that, at least that's the narrative. But it's like, if you remove this technology, like the chair, like the shoe, and you just put your body in play, even, I mean, nature is obviously best, but even just removing the technology and being in your home, your body figures it out. And it's uncomfortable at first because it's used to being supported, but your body over time can self-organize, and having a bit of guidance and like we said, a little bit of comfort to make it a little bit more enticing. It's amazing how quickly the body adapts to that, because that's, like you said, it's what it really should be doing. It's what our genes, it's what our DNA expects to do. And when we give our feet the impact, or we give them the chance to strengthen and mobilize and to absorb impact, then it feels really good and it feels right, and they actually adapt really quickly. And the same thing with your hips, with sitting on the ground versus sitting in a chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's sort of like now the job for all healthcare professionals, or anyone who wants to push this sort of stuff, is our job is to, how do we, one, get more people doing it, but two, get people to do it at the right sort of speed and pace, rather than jumping straight in. Like, there's going to be people who want to do that, and you talked about the extremes before, but most people aren't the extremes, and most people maybe want to dip a toe in and slowly change, which is great, which is the best way to sort of do it, because you're really becoming super uncomfortable with what you're doing and what you're changing. But it's sort of now, I feel like it's our job to sort of push that lifestyle to people at the right rate and with the right education, so that they don't hurt themselves. And I think it's always an interesting topic. Like when Barefoot Shoes first came out and they were like a rage for a little while, I used to work in a shoe shop, and they kind of came and went because the minimalist shoes sort of came about, and everyone was trying to run in them, and people were just they were going from their massive Asics Steel Keanos to a barefoot shoe and trying to run for a half marathon the next day, and then they'd come back with all sorts of massive issues. I think obviously we've learned from that, and so I think that's an important thing to talk about, and to definitely, I suppose, just make sure that we're doing it at the right speed for people.
That's a really, really good point, actually, because that's a huge reason why the footwear industry and the podiatry industry goes, oh no, barefoot shoes are not good for you, because I've seen all these people that have come in with shin splints and stress fractures and tendinopathies as a result of wearing barefoot shoes. But the context is missing of they didn't transition appropriately, basically. So we've actually just produced an ebook called it's like a guide to foot freedom, but it's all about how to transition to barefoot and barefoot shoes, because the transition element is really important. Because similarly with the feet getting sore if they do too much, if someone's been sitting in chairs for 20 years, 8 hours, or probably more than 8 hours, more like 12 to 15 hours a day, their body is very, very used to sitting in chairs, and their hips are very adapted to sitting in chairs. And even though I said, yes, the body adapts quickly, you really need to respect the fact that the dosage matters. And if you just changed all of that sitting, or even like a few hours of that sitting to ground sitting, you'd probably end up with sore backs, sore hips, just more extreme levels of discomfort. Whereas if you trickle it in, like you say, and transition appropriately, do 5 minutes at a time, explore different positions, bolster, use different things to help bolster the body and get used to positions over time, then it's a much smoother transition, and it's less volatile, I think, and it's a much more sustainable, I think, too. Because if people get hurt trying something, like I'm sure there's a huge population of people now who go, "No, I'm never doing barefoot shoes again because I got hurt the last time I did it." Like the brain doesn't want to repeat things that make it hurt. Basically, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so if someone has a bad experience trying to transition to being on the ground, they're like, "Nah, I tried that, doesn't work for me."
Yeah, and we obviously want to limit that as much as possible. But at the same time, I think all these people will again come around. The people who unfortunately had a bad experience with the barefoot stuff, they've just got to be told it enough times and understand it more. And I think, on that point as well, I think you mentioned that, the body does definitely adapt to what it's given every day. But, as we always preach that, your body doesn't really respond well when it's in pain. And so if what's causing the pain is too big a step towards grounded living or sitting on the floor, then it's those baby steps that's important. And it might be getting a bolster or getting something that's not going to throw them straight in the deep end and get them to work up to it and just increase their tolerance. And that's when it adapts quickly, when it's just slowly increasing its level of comfort over time. I think that's the money there.
Yeah, 100%. And I always like to use the analogy of, like, you wouldn't go to the gym for the first time in 10 years of sitting on the couch and doing no exercise. You wouldn't go to the gym and deadlift 100 kilos first up, and you'd be a terrible personal trainer if you tried to make someone do that. And it's obviously, it's a different thing, but you can use that analogy and it makes sense to people, because even though it's a low load thing, sitting on the ground or something like that, then you'd still, it's the same concept of the specific adaptation to impose demand, the SAID principle. And we still need to respect that the body needs that time to adapt, and you'd much prefer to do a 5 kilo deadlift or even just a no kilogram hip hinge, and then go to, slowly build up 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 15 kilos. And then you get really strong. You feel good while you do it because you build confidence and sort of self-efficacy at each point. And then before you know it, the time passes very quickly, and then you're deadlifting 100 kilos and you're feeling great doing it, and you haven't hurt your back along the way, and you've learned a bunch of skills, and you feel really confident and empowered, and yeah, it's just it's a much smoother process, which I think is very important.
Yeah, smooth is definitely the key.
So there's a saying that gets thrown around. I think it's mostly from the weightlifting scene, but it's like slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah, it's good. It kind of works well for this too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. It works well for a lot of things, I reckon.
Definitely, and yeah, like.
And sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna sort of say, yeah, like it's take a deep breath. Yeah, I think a lot of people are maybe in pain, and they're frustrated with my body doesn't move well. I just want to jump straight into something and I want to see results straight away. But
yes, yeah.
sometimes it's about just slowing them down and getting them to take a breath. And as you said, slow is definitely the way to go. And just slowly increasing. And the best part of all of this is, there's no body that doesn't adapt if it's just given the right stimulus. No one's an exception to the rule. And I think that sometimes helps, when people are, again, it could be weight loss, same thing. Like everyone is going to adapt if you give them something different. For things to change, things have to change. And if you do it at the right rate, then people, their bodies respond really well to it.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think unfortunately, there are a lot of people who think, or who have come to believe through their experience, that they are different and that their bodies just don't work with, for instance, being on the ground, or just don't work with barefoot shoes, or just don't work with XYZ, going to the gym or something. And they have internalized that, not necessarily through their own fault, but they've internalized that as an issue being with their body rather than with their approach. But like you said, there are no exceptions to the rule. Every body adapts, and it is adapting to what you expose it to. So it's not just that, you're not getting any adaptation if you don't sit on the ground or if you don't go to the gym. You're still getting adaptation, but it's adapting to being in a chair, or being still, or being in cushioned shoes. It's just adapting in a different direction. And so every body is constantly adapting. There's no exceptions to that rule, and it's about if a certain practice hasn't worked for you in the past and it makes sense to you, it's still possible to make it work. You just need to change up your approach, basically.
Yeah, good. And that's a good way to put it too. You adapt to the negatives that you have in your life as well. So sometimes just cutting them out is going to make a bigger change than, focusing on other things.
Yeah.
And even
it's
focusing on what can you change in your lifestyle or life that is currently moving you away from where you want to go. And if you could change that habit with something that is going to move you towards where you want to go, then that's a game changer right there. And that's basically what we're trying to do with grounded living. It's like, get off the couch, jump on the floor, get comfortable.
Even if it's only for 5 minutes to start with, and or 2 minutes, or 1 minute, or 30 seconds.
Totally.
Try something.
Look, there's a lot of people that 30 seconds is a lot for them to be sitting on the floor, and I get it.
Or even just getting down on the ground and back up without even spending time there. That's a big thing.
Absolutely. But with some good guidance, it's like people get it, they start to understand, and then when they start to notice those little changes, that's when that excitement kicks in, and that's when they want to go for it. So it's cool.
And what got you into the whole grounded living, or ground living and ground movement, all that kind of stuff originally?
So I was speaking briefly before about I used to do a lot of functional training. I did a lot of CrossFit back in the day, and I suppose when I first started, all of this stuff CrossFit and functional training is just the big standard on full squats and getting your hips down past your knees to finish the repetition. And so it's I think back then it was a lot of forcing myself down into those positions, and just getting good at doing that and probably cranking up my hips at the time. And um, I had really dysfunctional hips, and I think I've spoken to you about it a couple of times. Like, I used to be the guy who, I played a lot of soccer growing up. I'd point my toes barefoot, and I'd just get a savage cramp all the way through my feet,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
calves, and just like cramps, not the best thing. So
No.
I was sort of just, I was over it, and I was over like putting so many hours into training and moving my body, and still not having the ability to sit on the floor. There's a couple of moments that really, made me frustrated with it, but overall, it just got to the point where I was like, I can't keep training this hard through injuries and being frustrated with lower back pain and shoulder issues and ankle issues and all that stuff. And I need to focus more on like movement. And so I completely changed how I trained personally. I was only doing
Hmm.
movement based training that was going to help me with range of movement and function and stuff like that. And at the same time, started doing your course, the Foot Nerd program with you guys, and
Hmm.
I sort of just made a promise to myself: every minute that I spend studying, I'm going to sit on the floor to do this. And so, like you, I got some gym flooring, some soft under bum flooring, and spent all that time sitting on the floor. And game changer. Like, I just noticed so quickly how much my body changed, and I was super sore. Like, I was as sore as I've ever been from a couple of days or a few hours of sitting on the ground the first few days. But as you said,
Yeah.
my body started to adapt, and um, I started getting excited about my knees getting a little bit closer to the ground and not having knee pain when I cross my legs for a minute or so.
Hmm.
And then, the ability to be able to sit down with my ankles flat on the floor when I'm kneeling, um, and just those little things as I got better and better. Uh, and and I spent a lot of time. This is sort of during lockdown last year. Is when I spent a year and a half ago. Is when I spent a lot of this a lot of the time grounded, and then kind of got back into training, and I just felt like a different person. Um,
Mm.
and I'd go into the gym and I'd squat, and different muscles would start blowing up because I was squatting properly, or a lot more close to properly, and I wasn't compensating through my lower back, and my lower back wasn't flaring up if I loaded up any sort of a squat. And so I just noticed all of these like really cool changes personally. And yeah, that's the big thing that I changed. That, and the fact that I was just getting into some more movement based training, and the biggest joint in the body, the hips, were just like, they felt really different. And I was able to do things that I was never able to do before. And I would never have been able to force myself into these positions, which
Mm.
is how my original approach was. And now
Yeah.
it's like I was fluidly moving down into positions and sort of just not recognizing it, getting really excited about flexibility and mobility and all this stuff that was just I don't know, just a thing I had to do before, but now it's something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's a key thing as well. Is when you start to make that progress with the habitual lifestyle type practices, then everything else does become more enjoyable, and it's less of a battle. Like, you don't have to battle with your body. You're not like fighting your body to improve this range of motion and just forcing it into these different positions. It's like, oh no, you've got your base of very good functional mobility, and you can keep improving that, but you can explore that by adding load and adding, whatever you want, adding some breath work, adding whatever. um, but it becomes a bit more of it's more of an exploration rather than a battle, which I think is a really, really important thing. And it makes all of those changes more effective and also more sustainable.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also, it gives you the knowledge on how to work on your own body, which I think everyone should have.
Mm.
Whether you have a trainer, whether you're an athlete, whatever, whoever you are, you should have some sort of general understanding on, my body feels pretty crap today. I think it's my lower back. I know these couple of things or these couple of movements that I do is going to help release it and make it feel better. And it's one of those things that I tackle every day. Like, tension in your body it's a big deal. Um, it affects energy levels, it affects mental health, it affects so many things.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll be having a bad day, whatever sort of bad day it might be, and I'll jump up, do a bit of movement, and I'll kind of just, again, take a deep breath and kind of go, where am I feeling the most amount of tension? And that changes day to day depending what I've done the last few days, and going through some stretches, going through some movement, sort of understanding, what I need to do to make my body feel better and therefore make my mind feel better or make my energy levels better or whatever it might be. And, that's only something that I've really given some conscious thought the last year and a little bit, versus before that, it was just always train every day, go, go, go.
Yeah.
But I think there's better ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said about people knowing that they're in control, that they have the power within their own body, is a huge thing. And going, yeah, like, oh, if my lower back's sore, then I know XYZ will make me feel better. If I'm just feeling really lethargic and not having a great day, then movement's guaranteed to make me feel better. But then also taking it that step further and going, well, why would my back be sore? I sat in a chair for 12 hours yesterday, or I did a bunch of gardening work that I wasn't ready for, I haven't trained for, or I is just way more than I usually would do. Just really tapping in and understanding that, because it's interesting how many times I would see physio clients and they'd be like, oh, this pain came on completely out of the blue, don't really know what happened, and I'm sort of there trying to, quote unquote, diagnose, or just trying to understand the situation and understand what's brought this on. And the more you ask questions, generally people go, oh yeah, actually that was a lot more, like, oh yeah, I did run 15 kilometers and usually I only run 2, so that could have done. I'm like, yeah, okay, now we're onto something.
Yeah.
Or it's along those lines, and it's very, very common for people to just, I guess, be out of tune with their body and the concept of load management and stress management. And or they might say, oh yeah, they've got a heap of work stress and family stress, and they've just had someone pass away in their family, and they're being fired from their job or something like that. But they're not necessarily aware that musculoskeletal pain can be contributed heavily to by emotional pain and stress and so on. And so it's just understanding the body and how pain works. You don't have to understand it very deeply, but just understanding that it is it's a signal that is telling you something, but it's not necessarily telling you exactly what's wrong. But if you can get a little bit analytical on your own life and just have a look at different factors, then which factors you can control and which factors you can't control, and then you can just focus on the ones that are in your control.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's just reminding people that they actually probably know what's up. When someone's there's always a reason. When someone, as you said, has a really bad lower back, it's always, if you ask enough questions, you get down to the reason why it's happening. So definitely dealing with it and knowing what you need to do, but then also going, oh, that's why it's like this. And I feel like any good health professionals sort of working with someone and asking them, like a therapist, just asking them why and why might that be the case, and getting them to understand it themselves is that's golden, I think, for them.
It's key. It's so much, and it's way better than saying, oh, your back hurts like this because of this, this, and this. It's like, if someone actually comes to that conclusion themselves and starts to figure it out, then that's the real empowerment there, where they're actually like, oh yeah, okay, I've got a bit of control here. I know what's going on. And it's much better than just saying, oh, the therapist said, or the PT or whatever just said I had to stop sitting so much. People need to sort of come to the conclusion themselves, and so it's important. And I was going to ask, what I'm sure we've talked about it before, but what got you into the Foot Nerd program originally?
Yeah, I think originally, I went through this really like fun process of, when I first got into the PT industry and worked as a trainer for the first few years, I opened up a boot camp. I ended up running that. It was really successful, went really well, and I ended up opening up a gym and went through the process of that. And I think at the time I worked on, I trained people like very functionally based. So everything was sort of high intensity, but with big focus on how the body moves. And I had a big interest for that holistic everything from day dot within working in this industry. And I unfortunately went through a loss very close to me and ended up getting rid of the gym. And I went away for 6 months, 8 months, just traveling by myself, and had a lot of time to reflect and think, and decided that if I wanted to get back into the industry, I really wanted to explore or scratch that itch of like not wanting to be just your normal everyday PT. And so I wanted to look a little bit outside the box and look more down the route of, being a movement coach, or care more about how you can have, functional movement help lifestyle, crossover with food, crossover with sleep. And I wanted to be really holistic with it. And so, I started getting a little bit more into, researching on that kind of thing. And I came across the Foot Collective page and did one of the online seminars at the time when I got back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Just fell in love with like the fact that you look at everything, and the fact that, your feet relate to your hips, which relate to the rest of your body. And I resonated a lot with the fact that you guys sort of started with the feet and then realized quickly that you can't just look at the feet to fix the feet. You've got to look at everything. And, there's elements of mental health that you talk about. There's elements of everything that encompasses, everything. And it's really interesting to look into that. And so I liked the vibe, liked the look of the course. And so I decided, during lockdown last year, the year before, it was a really cool thing to do, and jumped in, started the program. And it's been really cool. It's been like exactly what I wanted. But I wouldn't have known until I kicked it off, if that makes sense. I didn't quite fully know what it was involved, but it's been a really eye-opening kind of course, and I've met some really cool people through it as well.
Yeah, amazing, man. Yeah, it's awesome to have you in there. And I love, a big thing I love about the Foot Nerd community is everyone is from different backgrounds and has their own sort of expertise and interests, and everyone has their own thing going, and we can all support each other on the shared mission. Like everyone has their own thing going, but everyone's sort of got that shared value and shared mission of like, we want people to be in better control of their health. And you got to start somewhere, so starting in the feet makes sense, but then it opens up all of these avenues like ground living, and that's it's a huge component of our philosophy now, because it is so key for overall movement health, but also foot health, and obviously the two are very related or inseparable, really. And yeah, just having this group of really cool humans all working on that same wavelength is a real privilege to be a part of, I think. So it's cool, and it's growing in Australia now too. It's getting quite a awesome crew. Most of which are locked down at the moment, but I'm looking forward to getting you guys all up to Queensland soon when it's possible.
Yeah, it'd be all good to get all together and catch up. But yeah, no, it's so little about the Foot Collective. It's the community that's so important. And what I mean by that is like everyone's brought together from the Foot Collective, but it's everyone has got so much to give. And I've learned so much. I'm passionate about ridiculous things I didn't think I'd ever be passionate about. Getting into it, and it's cool. It's really opened up my world, and I think the same for pretty much everyone.
Yeah, for sure. What's one of the ridiculous things that's caught my attention?
Oh no, not ridiculous. Probably
my curiosity.
Just things like like in 2 years, like I used to joke to my mum. My mum loves plants and loves having a perfect garden at home and knows so much. And I always used to joke I was never sort of too interested in any of it, and used to give her a bit of a hard time about it. And now I'm the one who's growing things at home, and there's greenery all around
Yeah.
all the time. And so when I say ridiculous, I just mean it's just ridiculous how far I've come, I suppose, in like,
Yeah.
yeah, like we want to grow our own things at home, and be in a place that's set up for that kind of thing. And it's just so cool. And uh, we live, in a really nice place here in Sydney, and like I would never have appreciated nature like I do. And I think
Mm.
it's also coming down to being that little bit older. I think when you're younger, you kind of just like blast your way through life and don't think too much about the things. But yeah, no, it's I'm just so much more interested about all sorts of different things nowadays, which is really
Yeah. Yeah, I think having that exposure, I think that's the beautiful thing. Like we all come together on feet, but having that exposure to all these people, like Georgina, for instance, she's a major inspiration for me. Who's in Melbourne, and we went and visited her family home where she's got this amazing
that's
home sort of permaculture thing.
yeah,
You saw that video,
yeah,
yeah? Isn't that
amazing,
amazing?
yeah. How do you do it?
and and she's a massage therapist, sort of by training, I suppose. But she has all this stuff going on in her backyard, and it just sort of makes you realize, like, not everyone, but most people can do this to some degree. Or I'm tempted to say everyone can do this to some degree with the right level of education and guidance, and some resources. But it's just about deciding that that's something that you want to do. And yeah, I'm the same. Like, through this process of starting the Foot Collective in Australia, I suppose, and through my connection with Nick, and through all the Aussie Foot Nerds, and just with the global Foot Nerd community in general, I had this idea of, well, first of all, I want to spend a lot more time in nature. Second of all, my family happens to have land that's available, and gee, I want a really cool nature campus that all these cool people can can come along and spend time in person as a group. um, and then it sort of led me to these different opportunities that I don't think I wouldn't have pursued as just a physiotherapist doing his thing, running a physiotherapy business. And it does, I think, yeah, that connection with nature is a big thing, because when you connect with the nature of your feet, as in they need load and they need to be barefoot, and they need to be exposed to grass and stone and trees and everything, then you go, well, okay, well, what else does my body need from a natural biological level? And you apply it to everything, and because we are nature. I think that's a big thing that people forget, is we are nature. Humans are part of nature, but we've tried to separate ourselves,
Yeah,
unsuccessfully, and to our detriment.
yeah, absolutely. We've tried bloody hard to separate ourselves, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And the harder we try, the worse things get, really. So
yeah,
it's yeah.
no, absolutely.
It's,
And as you sort of said, like it sort of just starts with a little interest, and that could just be someone else being excited about it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a passion of yours before you know it. And
mm,
and that's for anything, I've like I often speak to people now, and people I know and see quite often. They come up to me like, man, I spent an hour sitting on the floor today. It was really cool.
hey.
They're excited about it. And they're like, I was thinking of you the whole time. And I'm like, that's a little weird. But it's
The whole
cool.
time.
It's really cool, and they're excited about it, and they're like, man, like I get it now. Like my hips feel great, and my back pain's going, and it's feeling a lot better. And I've got a little setup at home, and I sit in the sun and I read, and it's just really cool that it just starts with something small like that, and it's happening for
Yeah.
you and I as well. Like it just starts with something small, and then all of a sudden it develops this big passion, and
Hmm.
that's like a really good example of like something that's life changing.
Yeah, that's huge, actually. And I love getting those messages of like mates or family members being like, oh yeah, or just telling me in person, like, oh, I went for a big barefoot walk the other day, or, you know, something like
Yeah.
that. And it's those little habits that, yeah, can almost seem insignificant, but when you add them all up together, like a daily barefoot walk, you get into sun, you get sunshine, you sit on the ground, you know, interact with someone, you know, all these little habits that really add up to make a huge difference on your health and your quality of life. So it's yeah, it's an exciting time to be in our industry, I suppose, or in this movement, because there's still, as much as there are heaps of people who are on this wavelength and it's really cool to be around, there's also so many people that aren't. Like I always talk about with people how, you know, in my world, there's so many people who are into barefoot things and barefoot shoes, but then you go out for a walk along the river and
Oh,
99.9% of people are in, like, I think I've maybe seen one or two people barefoot before, which is awesome. Well, awesome that they're there, but not awesome that it's only one or two people.
yeah.
And like very rarely see someone in barefoot shoes. So there's still a big role for change, and obviously the same goes for chairs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's cool that these like niches are kind of intertwined and they talk to each other so much, and often
Mm,
sharing what each other do, because once one of us grabs someone and say I get someone out of a chair a little bit more, and then share one of your posts, and they're like, oh, what's this? And like, so people get the bonus of becoming part of this community that just shares all of the good information that people need. And
mm.
again, when they start seeing those positive changes from one thing, they're like, okay, cool, what's the next thing to work on and add in there?
Yeah, and it's so true. Like the chair is like the equivalent of the shoe. Like the chair is for the body what the shoe is for the feet, in a sense. It just it restricts movement, and it makes it more comfortable to be, well, certain shoes obviously, but it makes it more comfortable to be moving less, and to be working less. And when, like we've talked about at the start, is when you take away that technology, then the body figures it out, and then soon enough, the chair, like for me, chairs now are quite uncomfortable. Sitting on the ground is very comfortable and very sort of fulfilling and satisfying. And likewise with shoes, like if I try on, like the other day, or it was a while back actually, but I tried on my mate's shoe for the sake of it, because there's like this big Adidas cloudy cushioned shoe, and I was
Yeah,
like, oh man, how do you wear this? Like it
yeah,
just seems so foreign and gross, and my body's like, no thanks. Even though probably 5 years ago I would have thought, oh yeah, that's really comfy.
yeah,
It's like your perception of comfort changes.
yeah, definitely. And we often talk about it. It doesn't feel like you're working on your foot strength when you just got barefoot shoes on or no shoes on.
Mm,
Everyone's always really interested by the fact that they can sort of unconsciously work on maybe their hip health or the strength of their feet just by changing a couple of things. So I think that's a cool thing to talk about as well, is that, you don't have to sit there and stretch to make your hips better. You can literally just sit on the floor. And once it becomes enough of a habit, you don't even think about doing it. I don't sit on the floor now to help my hips. I just sit on the floor because it's what I do.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
exactly right.
same with
Yeah.
shoes. I've still got so many pairs of shoes that we're about to throw out, that take up way too much room. I used to work for a running shoe shop, and like I've just not worn any of them in so long. And I
Mm,
put on one pair, and like my feet are like a lot more broad than they used to be because I've been
yeah,
barefoot the last 2 years, and just every pair of shoes is just like shoving my toes together. It feels so foreign, and that's been
yeah.
2 years. So it's crazy how far it might be in the next couple of years, like you.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And you just can't do it really. Like you find alternatives. Like there was one time, I can't remember if I've talked about it on the podcast before, but there was one time where a few years ago when I first started the Foot Collective, and I hadn't really expanded my range of barefoot shoes, and I went on a date, and all I had of nice sort of date shoes, I suppose, was like pointy Windsor Smiths or whatever they were.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah, I'll chuck them on. And then within like 20 minutes of walking them, just while I was getting ready, I started getting this weird neck pain that I've never gotten before or since. And I was like, that's pretty strange.
Yeah.
Like I just put on these shoes and then straight away my neck starts hurting. So I'm pretty sure I took them off and just copped looking like a bit of a, a lame-o in my barefoot shoes. But yeah. But then I expanded my range, and the good thing is, you don't have to really sacrifice too much on fashion or style to get into barefoot shoes. And likewise, with your upcoming product with the grounded living cushion, then the idea is that it fits into your space nicely. Like it's functional furniture. It looks good. It's something that you want to have on display in your house, and it's something that is inviting to sit on. So I'm certainly looking forward to getting one.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that was definitely our goal with it. We wanted it to look good at the same time. We wanted to appeal to the people who aren't necessarily already sold on this lifestyle. We want it to appeal to like the everyday person, so it wants to look good and obviously be really comfortable from the get-go, but comfortable to sit on for a long time as well. So that's exciting, man. Exciting times.
Yeah. And so it'll be the day that this podcast releases, actually, will be the day that the giveaway starts. So I guess we'll just put a little shout out. If you're interested in what we're talking about, the giveaway will include a grounded living cushion from Mitch and Grounded Living Co. And then it'll include one of our Down Under tables, which we've talked before about on the podcast, but it's basically like a little mini coffee table in a sense. That's just low enough for you to sit on the ground and do all your eating and laptop work and whatever you want. And then also a foot restoration kit. So basically just building your body up from the ground up. And there'll be 3 of those to give away. So
yeah,
you'll check out your Instagram handle is Grounded Living Co.
Yeah, all one word.
All one word, and obviously ours is tfc.australia. And yeah, if you check out that today, and if you're listening to this over the next 10 days from what's the date? It's August 18th till September. Well, no, sorry, August 28th. Yeah. 18th to 28th, 10 days. Jump on that giveaway, and then we'll announce the winner at the end. Exciting.
Great.
Cool, mate. Well, we'll wrap it up there, and then when we can finally make it back down to Sydney, then we'll have to get another follow-up going, and we can sort of talk about how the grounded living cushion is going and any other projects that get on the way. Have you got any other sort of projects in your sights in the meantime? Anything that you can talk about?
We do. We have so many ideas. I've got way too many, but we've got some really cool ideas. Kind of, you mentioned like earlier, like the idea of someone who's too tight to just be jumping straight down on the floor. We want to have a product for that person to be able to slowly transition down to the floor. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at some options for that at the moment, and sort of putting some together. And yeah, it's kind of like it'll be something where it's like leveled so they can slowly work their way down to the floor again without too much of a big jump. We're really excited for that. We literally haven't even looked into it at all, but it's just an idea for now. And we've got some other cool things that we're thinking about, but obviously just want to get this first one out there and focus on that for now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll have more to chat about next time, and hopefully it'll be before the end of the year that we're able to get back down.
Sweet, man.
But we'll see.
Thanks so much for having me. Maybe we'll make it up.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, actually, that'd be great too. We've got to get you out bush.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. As soon as we can make it happen, that'll be great.
Cool.
Awesome, mate.
Having me.
We'll chat soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys.